Hello guys and welcome back to the September Sim. My name is Laura and today I have another speed build for you. This is a converted lighthouse turned into a modern home for the Bjergsen family in Windenburg. So get cozy, grab a blanket and a cup of tea and let's get into it. So before we start, I'd just like to thank you all for watching, and if you'd like to support me you can use my creator code TheSeptemberSim at checkout when purchasing EA games. So on to the build. So this is a build I've been wanting to do for a while. I want to do some kind of lighthouse style build. I've seen so many other builders do this kind of idea, and I have a thing about wanting things to fit in with like the world that it comes with, and no matter how many times I tried to do it, I just never found a way to make it different enough that wasn't what somebody else had already done or didn't fit in right. Until I saw this picture from Rightmove and knew I had to try and recreate it somehow, because I got really inspired with like the latest update with the glass walls, and also just like trying to use that really nice modern way of doing something while still keeping it a little bit like English cozy country vibe inspired, if that makes sense. So yeah, that's kind of the vibe I wanted to go for this one. So you'll see here that I'm just building the actual shell for it. So other than following the image that I just showed you there for the outside, I didn't follow the floor plan at all. I wanted to make that up completely because I wanted this to be, as I mentioned, for the Bjergsen family. So I wanted it to be room for them as they were pre-made. Turns out I'd left neighbourhood stories on, so when I went to play them and play test this build, they were expecting a baby, so at the time of building this, I didn't realise that. So I've just created room for the two daughters and then the parents. But there is a spare room in this that you're seeing that you can add. Well, I will be adding a nursery to. So here I'm just kind of doing the roofing. So what I kind of wanted to do here is to have the roofing extend into the side panels. So that's why I've added that little white panel on the edge of the roofs there that connects into the chimneys. And then here I'm having fun and games with the roof tool. Obviously the problem with the circle one is I didn't want it to overlap into the front, and circle rooms are just generally, not fun in this game. So I was trying to make it work as best as I could. I think I actually managed to get it to work in the end. So I ended up putting two walls between each other, and that caused it to it kind of acts, one of the walls kind of acts as like it doesn't exist, if that makes sense. It works either way. You can walk through one door into another door. I've play tested this. So yeah, some more bits on this. I'm kind of just fiddling around with the outside of it now. And I wanted to make sure there was enough light coming into the top. Yeah. So maybe I'll just talk about the elephant in the room here. So I've started doing voiceovers now because I just feel like there could be a bit more context maybe added to some of my builds. So every now and then I'll just pop in and say hello and tell you where the ideas came from, any tutorials that I've used here to create the build. So with this I'm just increasing the terrain because I wanted it to have a bit of a stepped garden look. In the back I wanted there to be more of a natural terrain that went with this, and I saw the inspiration for the actual house had like a curved seating area, which I thought was really fun. It was kind of carved out of the cliff face, so I wanted to recreate that with the terrain tool in here. I think as well I really wanted to make this sort of accessible for Sims, because I know that the steeper the hill the more they can't walk up it, so I was making sure that there was a lot of areas that were accessible. I think that's quite important in my builds. I don't tend to play the game a hell of a lot, but I know nearly everybody else does. I tend to just build and then be done with it. But yeah, I wanted to make sure that this was as playable as possible. I don't tend to like cluttering my builds or just adding things for the sake of adding. Sometimes I'll add things that are there for purely aesthetics, which I'll do in a second with the driveway, which I'm creating out there. But I wanted to make sure that the Sims could get inside this house and out of this house as easy as possible from both ways. So I pause when I'm building this a lot to make sure that the Sims can walk around, and I think it is important to me that people can actually play my builds. So I try and make that as one of the functional things that I do. But if you ever find any issues with my builds, please let me know, and I will do my best to alleviate them. So here I'm just decorating and popping the windows on the outside. So one thing I like to do with all of my builds is I tend to add windows, and I decorate the outside up completely before moving on to the inside. I don't like to add windows based on a floor plan. I always feel like I try to make my outside look as good as possible. I'm definitely more of an exterior builder than I am an interior. You know, sometimes I get inspiration for interior, but more often than not I just get tired with doing the interior after I've done the exterior. So here I am just adding in some little plant pots. I thought these little debug planters I thought were really cute as kind of like a start point. They remind me kind of that kind of like English Cotswold country vibe. You see a lot of these kind of things in the countryside. Really nice kind of rustic looking plant pots. So the wooden ones are debug from Horse Ranch, and the metallic ones are from For Rent. And then I've just added in little bushes. So what's quite nice about that is when the seasons change, these bushes will also change, which I think is quite nice, because I think if you use indoor plants outside, they don't tend to change with the season, and they can sometimes look a little bit out of place. So any outdoor plants, unless they're like specifically like little planters and pots, I'll try and use outdoor ones as much as possible so that they can change with gameplay. And then I'm using one of my other favourite debug items here, which is the ivy from University, as well as Cottage Living. Just decorating the outside here because this is quite a white build. There's a lot of negative space that I feel like needs to be, filled up with something. So that's where I was adding the ivy. I also think it gives it that really nice little overgrown feel, which I thought was quite a nice idea for this. I'm adding some cars in here, so obviously not functional. I just think it adds a little bit of extra realism to this build. I think a lot of my builds, I try and make them as realistic as possible whilst being functional. Technically, if you look at this lot, there's no way for these cars to drive up really anyway, but in my headcanon for this family, they definitely needed cars. I find the Bergson family probably do a lot of like biking and hiking and exploring their local areas a lot. I just get that kind of vibe from them. Very much a wholesome little family, which was quite true. When I started playing with them to playtest this build, they're probably one of the most wholesome families I've ever played. I don't know if anybody else found this. Like they were constantly in positive moodlets whenever they were next to each other, which I thought was really cute. Always in good moods, and like they always had really positive sentiments about each other. Both the kids were very well behaved, which I found strange. So yeah, anywhere else on this build, I'm just carrying with the outside. So usually what I like to do with this is I like to finish the outside before moving on to the interior. So but then I got bored of just placing a load of greenery around, so I wanted to move on to the interior pretty quickly on this one. So I just did the front, and then I did the garden separately last, because I had a bit more of an inspiration at that time. But yeah, just adding a bit more greenery here to make it feel a bit more overgrown and lived in, suiting to the vibe of where they are in Windenburg. And then I'll move on to the interior. So the interior for this, I was very much inspired by kind of, I don't know what you would call this aesthetic, I'll put it up on screen now. It's kind of like a dark, gloomy version of modern, so it's a lot of green, it's a lot of like navies and dark tones mixed in with blacks and gold accents. That was the entire vibe for this house, so I wanted it to be very sleek, I guess is the word, whilst also being cozy and lived in. It's very much the kind of interior design vibe I like, so if I had unlimited money, that's how I decorate my own house. And yeah, I'm just building the kitchen here. So the kitchen is based on that spherical wall outside, and I'm trying my best here to align everything. So obviously there is a little bit of clipping on the left stove there, and onto the right as well. But don't worry, it's all completely functional. I've play tested it. The counters are usable, the stoves are usable, the ovens are usable. It's all usable, and no fires yet. I don't know if them being that close to each other makes it more likely to catch on fire or not. But yeah, I've been playing this for a few days. A few in-sim days, and there's been no fires yet. So then for this family, I think they were the main inspiration for how I decorated the interior on this. So I forget what the mum's called. I can't remember her name, but I know the daughters are Sophia and Elsa. But yeah, the mum, she's a chef, and she's like working hard on her culinary and mixology skills. So I wanted to make sure the kitchen was quite a big place that she could work on those. So I wanted there to be a bar area in there, as well as a big area for her to work on with cooking and stuff like that. And the Sims can walk up the left and the right there. They're completely usable. So it's all functional that you can use here. And then the rest of the kind of build, I was very much inspired by the personalities and skills of the actual family that was living here. So Sophia, I think, is she's quite gifted in like musical art, so I think she's got quite a high guitar skill. So I tried to put a lot of keyboards, pianos and guitars in this house, and loads of stereos as well, so that she could carry on with that as her interest. And what was quite cute about this family, so I mentioned earlier how they always had like positive moodlets whenever they were around each other, but whenever Sophia started playing music, they all went and watched her, which I thought was really cute, and she didn't mind that either. I just thought it was a really like wholesome family vibe that these guys were. So I stayed and played with them a little bit longer after I'd finished play testing this build, because I didn't want to let them go. Yeah, but then everything else in this house, I wanted to make it as family orientated as possible. So there's lots of bookshelves. I also added lots of those picture frames. I think they come from Growing Together, potentially, with the empty picture frames in, because I wanted that to kind of be, this is definitely like a legacy house. Maybe not enough rooms for a legacy house, but you know what I mean? Like very much a family gameplay house is what I wanted here. I wanted there to be lots of room to make memories and lots of room to add more things in that your Sims use and do in their gameplay. Elsa, the little girl, came home with some pictures that she drew at school, so I put them straight up on that bare wall in the kitchen there, which I thought was nice. So I try and keep like a little storyline in my head as I'm building and decorating these houses to make sure that they are, they're suited to the gameplay that I want to play in them, or how I would envision whoever uses this build to play in them. So it was that was definitely the kind of vibe for it. And then so the master bedroom is downstairs, and then there's 3 bedrooms upstairs, so 1 spare, and 1 for Elsa and 1 for Sophia. So Sophia's room, you'll see, has got lots of musical memorabilia, and it's decorated very much for her. And then Elsa, I kind of got the vibe, I think she's got a motor skill, so I wanted to make sure that she had lots of things to do in her room, as well as it being, I got quite like a feminine, girly vibe from her, so I wanted her room to be quite pink and floral and like her personality. So yeah, I mean, I've waffled on for about 15 minutes now, so I'm quite happy to stop here and just let the music come on in and play us out. But thank you very much for tuning in and watching. I very much appreciate it, and I shall catch you in the next one. Bye bye.